So, how does a giant company not only survive, but actually grow in one of the planet's most controversial industries? Well, today we're going to unpack the story of Ostindo Nusantara Jaya, or ANJ for short. We're going to see how they navigated a really transformative decade in the super complex world of agribusiness. Let's jump in. Right off the bat, this is their mission statement, their North Star. And you got to admit, it's a pretty bold promise. They're setting a very, very high bar for themselves. So throughout this explainer, we're going to see how ANJ has tried to make good on this vision, while dealing with huge opportunities and some really significant challenges. And you should know, this vision isn't just some nice-sounding tagline they put on a brochure. Nope. It's the actual blueprint for their entire strategy. It guides pretty much everything they do, from their day-to-day business all the way to their big moves into new and sometimes pretty unexpected territory. To even try to hit that world-class goal, ANJ built up a really diverse portfolio. You've got palm oil, obviously, but they're also into sago, edamame, and even turning waste products into renewable energy. But for a very long time, one of these businesses was the absolute giant in the room, the powerful engine that was driving pretty much everything else. And yup, you guessed it, that engine was palm oil. It was the fuel for ANJ's growth, for its profits. But it also meant the company was riding the wild, unpredictable waves of the global commodities market. Let's take a look at just how big a deal this really was. Wow. This slide really tells the whole story, doesn't it? Just look at that dominance. Back in 2016, palm oil made up more than 94% of ANJ's entire revenue. Now, when a single product carries that much weight, the company's entire fate is basically welded to its price. And this right here, this shows you the roller coaster ride they were on. This chart tracks the price of crude palm oil, or CPO. Get this. In just 1 year, between 2014 and 2015, the average price just plummeted by over 25%. Can you imagine what a nosedive like that does to a company that's 94% dependent on that one number? Well, the impact was, immediate, and it was brutal. Their CPO sales value dropped by over $28 million. But the really eye-watering number is the EBITDA margin. That's a key measure of how profitable a company is. It was more than cut in half, just cratering from 40% down to under 19%. Let's be clear, this wasn't a small dip. It was a financial shockwave hitting the company. So what do you do when you get hit like that? Well, this kind of pressure forced ANJ to get really innovative and really lean fast. They brought in more automation, they got way smarter with how they used fertilizer, they started recycling waste back into the soil as nutrients, and they rethought where to put their mills to be more efficient. Basically, they had to squeeze every single drop of efficiency out of their operations just to stay afloat. But here's the thing, facing that harsh reality, ANJ realized that just being more efficient wasn't going to be enough in the long run. They had to change the game. And this really kicked off a major strategic push to diversify, to build whole new pillars for the company to stand on. Let's see exactly how they pulled that off. The logic here is actually pretty brilliant. They didn't just go out and pick another random crop. They chose businesses that would complement and, in some ways, contrast with palm oil. Take sago, for example. It's not grown on a plantation, it comes from a natural forest. It's not some volatile global commodity, it's an emerging market that could help with local food security. It was a really smart strategic hedge. And this whole pivot was incredibly deliberate. First, they got out of their old tobacco business, which just didn't fit their vision anymore. Then they went into sago in a huge way out in West Papua. They targeted high-value export markets with edamame, and so cleverly, they figured out how to turn a waste product, the stuff left over from palm oil mills, into a brand new revenue stream through biogas energy. Okay, so they're growing, they're diversifying, but that kind of growth, especially in a place like West Papua, brings with it a massive, profound responsibility. And this brings us to the real core tension of ANJ's story. How do you pull off huge development projects while also protecting one of the world's most vital and sensitive ecosystems? This is the question. It's the one that hangs over this entire industry. How do you bring jobs and infrastructure to communities that need them, while at the same time preserving the natural world that they, and all of us, depend on? There are definitely no easy answers here. But let's just look at the sheer scale of what ANJ is dealing with. Let's talk scale for a second. Get a load of this number. This is the size of ANJ's land concession in West Papua. It's just a vast, vast area. It holds incredible potential for development and economic growth for sure, but it also holds immense ecological value. And now look at this number. This is how much of that land ANJ has publicly promised to set aside for conservation. That's nearly half of their entire area. Right away, this tells you that their strategy isn't just about planting and harvesting, it's also about preserving. And to prove this wasn't just talk, they put it all down on paper in a formal sustainability policy. It includes some very clear, very verifiable promises. Absolutely no development on peatlands, no using fire to clear land, protecting these special high conservation value forests, and, this one's critical, respecting the rights of local communities through a process of getting their consent. These are the rules of the game they set for themselves. And this quote, which comes from a public meeting with local people, it just grounds all of those corporate policies in a simple, powerful truth. For the communities who live there, the forest isn't just some abstract resource to be managed. It is their life. Any kind of responsible development has to start right there, with that understanding. So, after a decade of riding commodity roller coasters, of diversifying their business, of grappling with this huge puzzle of sustainability, where does a company like ANJ stand today? And what does the future have in store? This little table here does a fantastic job of summing up their whole journey. You can see the evolution, right? The company went from being focused purely on efficiency to then trying to survive price shocks by diversifying, and now to navigating the really intense pressure from the market and the public about doing things responsibly. Each phase brought a brand new defining challenge. And after all that progress and all that change, the bottom line is that the fundamental tension at the very heart of their vision is still there. They operate in an industry that's absolutely essential for the world's food supply, but it's also constantly under a microscope for its impact on the environment and on people, which kind of leaves us with this final question to think about. ANJ's story is really a fascinating case study of a company trying to solve this very puzzle. So, is it actually possible to build a world-class company that genuinely elevates people while also working in harmony with the planet? Or is that the fundamental and maybe unsolvable challenge for the entire future of this industry?